familiar with this idea of a credit score. And so often you hear persons, particularly from North America, fussing about any issue that may or may not affect their credit score. Plain Talk this evening brings the Sales and Business Development Manager of Creditinfo Guyana Limited, a company that constructs a score, to tell us about the work they do, how it impacts you, how impacts the business community, and why every consumer and every individual ought to take their credit score seriously. Let me welcome Mr. David Falconer, Sales and Business Development Manager, Creditinfo Guyana Limited. Good evening, David.
Good evening, Chris, and thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you tonight. I think we'll have an interesting little chat.
Let's start. What is a credit score?
Oh, well, to answer that question, I've got to take you back a little bit because a lot of our viewers are not even sure what a credit bureau is, far less the score that we produce and how it's produced. So if it's okay with you, maybe I can start with that. So we've been asked that question before, of course. So what we are essentially is an organization that collects information. You've heard that that information is power. So we have taken that concept, and it's, of course, we're not the first in the United States and other developed countries. Credit reference agencies and credit bureaus, whatever you want to call them, are fairly commonplace. Everyone has heard of Experian and TransUnion and all the rest of the big fellas. So we collect information from a variety of sources, and we use this information to try to form judgments on the creditworthiness of individuals. Let me ask you a question. If I were to say to you that how you've behaved in the past is a pretty good indication of how you're going to behave in the future, what would you say to me?
Probably correct.
Right, and it's true of life, in fact, and it's also true of credit. And this is how banks and other lenders carry on their business. They assess how you've behaved in the past, how well you have serviced your various credit facilities, and how well you've paid, if you've paid on time, and that kind of thing. And they use this information to make predictions about the future. So we're doing exactly that, but on a larger scale, because we're collecting credit information from every conceivable source in Guyana.
Let's be clear. You say we collect information. Now, the police collects information. The security agency and intelligence agency collect information. We're not talking about that kind of information.
Not at all. We're talking about credit information. I should have probably made that clear. So it's credit information, and so of course some bit of biographic information also that is used to identify persons, because of course in Guyana there are a lot of common names. Not everybody has a funny name like me. Right. So this information is examined, it's analyzed, it's subjected to a series of algorithms. We track trends in the data, and we produce what are known as credit reports, which essentially are a record of how well you have serviced your various credit facilities. Now, your credit score, to come to your question, is an encapsulation of all the information that we have on any particular borrower. It's a number, in our case, between 250 and 900, that says to a lender how creditworthy you are. So if you're closer to 250, probably not so great. And if you're closer to 900, I think you'll find things are a lot easier and a lot more doors will be open. But this number is not a number we pluck out of thin air. It is representative of all the information that we have collected on any particular borrower, or company, or business. And of course, this information has to do with their debt burden, how well they have paid their various credit accounts, which, by the way, includes GPL and GT&T and GWI.
And we'll get to some of the details.
Sure.
You say that the credit score has a minimum of 250.
Correct.
And a maximum of 900. Now, again, you collect information. the information you collect, is this, when you use the word encapsulation, when you put that data together, that data provide some numeric value or indicator that, look, this person is a trustworthy person. In other words, this, if you were to lend this person money, the chances are, if this, the higher this person is to 900, the greater the chances that this person is going to repay that debt.
Exactly.
And of course, the converse is also true, that if a person has 250, and that's a minimum, so it means that someone could really be
Right,
at zero.
But it stops at 250.
So it means that that person is someone that any potential lender ought to be particularly careful about in extending credit.
That is also true.
Now, when we say potential lender, who are we talking about? You give a couple examples just now.
Well,
Guyana Water Inc.,
well, before we
Guyana
get,
Power and Light.
right, your credit is anything that you receive value for today that you pay for later. Okay, so then that means then that your postpaid landline account is credit. GWI is extending you the value of whatever your usage is in any given month in the fond hope that at the end of that period that you'll pay your bill, which amounts to repaying that loan. Now that's revolving credit because it's renewed 12 times a year. GWI's billing period being once once a month, right? And the same thing holds for the other utility companies, the telecom companies, and so on and so forth. So that data is also relevant, but it doesn't stop there. We collect information from all the commercial banks in Guyana. We collect information from credit unions.
I think we need to be careful. Banks are, of course, subject to confidentiality clauses on your customers, and we don't want this program to give any impression that something is happening behind the scenes affecting any individual. What assurances that the information that is collected is done legitimately, and that information is going to be used only for very legal purposes?
Okay, that's a good question. So let me first address legitimately. The Credit Reporting Amendment Act of 2016 requires that a few things.
In fact, there's a Credit Reporting Act.
Oh yes. Maybe I should have said that first. So
yes,
we are subject. We are perhaps, I don't know, we are perhaps the only company or one of the only companies in this country that has had an entire act of Parliament. Everybody sat down, debated, and passed an entire act just for us. And then there was an amendment. This took place in 2010, as I'm sure you're aware. And then in 2016, there was an amendment to that act, which took care of a few shortcomings the original legislation was seen to have. So currently, we are allowed to collect information from all these entities by law. We are regulated by the Bank of Guyana. So everything we do is audited and very closely looked at. We don't keep any information here. So if you break into our office tonight, you'll find my desk and a half-eaten sandwich and not much else. All our information is stored offshore, right? And while we're on that subject, to address the other part, which I'm sure is of concern too, most of our viewers might not be aware of how the security requirements for the storage of information. It starts from Tier 1 to Tier 4. Tier 1 being the least secure, and Tier 4 being applicable to companies like, say, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, right? Creditinfo was created at the cost of over $1 million, I believe, a data storage facility in the region that has been rated as Tier 3. It's the highest rating in the region of any company. and that's where we store information. Nothing is kept here, so that's
Why,
protected.
why is it not tier 4? A viewer listening here that is from 1 to 4, I say, but we're rolling 3.
I would imagine it's a matter of cost,
Mm-hmm.
right? Tier 3 is very, 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 very secure. Of course, there are levels of sensitivity for information. Tier 3 is appropriate for the purposes that we need it for.
One of the, and I want to stick to this issue of credit score, which is what people are going to be particularly concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
But people are also concerned about the integrity and security of their information. And as you know, we have had the great United States, not in the Trumpian sense, but in terms of the openness of the economy and the much vaunted development of the economy, has seen not only credit agencies, but financial institutions, financial houses being attacked by various malware
Mm-hmm.
in computer,
Mm-hmm.
and that information is then misused, perhaps for blackmail, perhaps to manipulate.
I think it's sold. Some of it is actually sold because of some of it is credit card information, passwords, that kind of thing.
How does Creditinfo Guyana Limited, a legally created or an institution that is created under a particular legislation, how does it guarantee the integrity of information?
So I'm going to ask you to clarify exactly. Are we specifically referring to whether or not, or to the extent the information is protected from hackers and unauthorized access?
Well, all that this information, I come back to the word legitimate
Okay.
only.
Right. So I'm going to deal with the hacking part first, and then I
Sure.
will deal with the other aspect of legitimate access, which is, of course, access that goes through normal channels but
Yes.
ought not to have happened. Right? So I've already told you that we have created a Tier 3 security facility. It's not in Guyana. Of course, it is available online. And
Hacking-
everything that's
hacking
online,
takes place.
and it takes place online. So
Yes.
I am not going to sit here and tell you that it's impossible. I can tell you that we have taken every precaution, and of course,
We meaning you're part of this group.
oh yes,
Creditinfo Guyana Inc. is actually owned by an Icelandic company.
correct. Our head office is in Iceland. We have been in the business of credit reporting for over 20 years.
What is its record in terms of integrity of information
It is
within the group?
It has we have never been subject to a hack. We have never been subject to any kind of unethical behavior. We have never been censured by any international or national or regional regulatory body for that kind of behavior. We're very serious about that kind of thing.
And the same standard that applies to any one entity within the Icelandic group
Hmm.
applies to Ghana. So
Of
there's
course.
an international standard.
Indeed.
So you can say here tonight, on behalf of the company and your CEO, who is unavoidably unable to come on the program this evening, that look, from a perspective of unlawful improper access, the Guyana Credit Bureau facility is as good as any internationally.
Oh, certainly. And while you're on the subject of international, let me just point out that we are truly an international organization. We didn't just, pop up yesterday. I already told you that we've been in the business of credit reporting and decision analytics for over 20 years. What I didn't tell you is we have 30-something credit bureaus and affiliates in 4 continents throughout the world. A lot of Guyanese haven't heard of us because of course, we watch American television. That's all that's available most of the time. But we're in Europe.
But they understand maybe what a credit score is.
Oh yes, yes, I'm sure.
A credit score, in fact, is a numeric representation of how good a person is in terms of the likelihood of meeting their debt.
So, a financial character reference, like a police clearance, for want of a better way to put it. So, that number says to someone, if I lend you or I extend credit to you today, that number says, gives me an indication of the extent to which I should be worried that I would have some difficulty with your payment a little later down the line, which is a big deal for Guyana, because I'll tell you this, a lot of us engage in what is known as relationship lending. Okay, and before the advent of the credit bureau, a lot of persons were given access credit simply on the basis of who they knew and who they didn't know. And while
that's not entirely true or fair.
I'm not saying
everybody. It's based on their reputation as well.
Right. Okay. It's based on your reputation. Let's go with that. But what happened in the past was that not enough information was available to accurately judge your reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that perhaps is the kindest way that I can put it. That being said, I don't want to give our viewers the impression that we are here, that this organization exists in Guyana to stop you from getting loans and so on and so forth. On the contrary, the whole idea behind sharing information to lenders is to help them to make better decisions and to lend to you faster and easier.
And this is not information that you create. It's just information that is provided from various sources, again legitimate sources, that go into a system, your computer system, and that then converts into a credit score. Is that how it operates?
It converts into a credit report, one part of which is a credit score.
Now, what does a typical credit report say?
A typical credit report will confirm your identity. It will tell us some identifying information about you. It will tell us how many loans you have and where. And by loans, again, let's just realize that I'm talking about all forms of credit. So it might be at a commercial bank, it might be at one of the microfinance institutions like IPED, it might be a utility account, it might be a telecoms account, it might be at a credit union, any number of places. As long as that organization is uploading to our database, then that information exists in there. Now, what is recorded is payment information month by month by month by month by month. So one of the things that is recorded, of course, is the extent to which you pay your bills on time. One of the things that's recorded is the extent to which you have a small or a large debt burden.
Mm-hmm. Right?
These things all speak to whether or not you are able to take on more debt. And if you were to take on more debt, what is the probability that you will have difficulties or not with repayment? The value of sharing information is to make lenders feel more comfortable. Okay, you know me very well, fairly well. We've been acquaintances and then friends for a while. So if I were to say to you, Mr. Ram, lend me $100,000, you'd still have to think about it, right? You know me, but not enough. Once you put a dollar value on this relationship, then you have to stop and say, right? And when you were coming in the front gate there, this television station, guy walked up to you and said, Mr. Ram, I know you've seen you on television. Would you lend me $5,000? I promise to repay you because, look, I'm a decent guy. Right? Which one of us would you be more likely to lend money to? And please don't say none. The point I'm trying to make is that one of the issues that stopped persons from accessing credit before was the lack of information in the system. So banks and lenders became risk averse. And when banks become risk averse, they react by carrying up interest rates,
or not lending,
or not lending, or really, really stringent collateral requirements. We are living today in 2018, and I don't know if you recall, in the late stages of 2017, it was possible at some banks they promised that if you go into the bank in the morning, you leave in the afternoon with a loan. 1-day loans. In Guyana, Chris?
No.
When does that ever happen?
Now, we go back to this information that is provided.
Sure.
Who are the people who help to make this credit report, which incorporates a credit score?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the people who make that possible?
Well, of course, there's very little human intervention, separate and apart from
No,
the...
well, you don't. Someone has to give the credit information.
I see what you're asking me. So,
Credit bureau some the information.
I'm going to try to list them. So, not by name, of course, but every commercial bank in the country, the microfinance people, the fine folks at IPED, there's the Small Business Development Finance Trust, there are a number of credit unions, there are a number of trade creditors. We number proudly amongst our subscribers people like Marcorp, Anson McCall Trading, the entire Massey group of companies, and a number of other commercial entities.
Not to leave out the hire purchase companies.
Oh, I was getting to that because I'm sure that if anybody were asked to make a list, that'd probably be the top of the list. So, of course, the hire purchase companies and also which is it's probably an issue we should touch on at some point a little later, the University of Guyana Student Loan Agency. Because a lot has been said about that particular agency, and I know that the government is trying to regularize the way things are done. We are working with them too.
So if one were to try to summarize this section of the discussion, a credit score is an assessment, a snapshot at a particular point in time.
There you go.
Of the credit worthiness of the person, whether the person is an individual, it's a partnership, firm, or a company. And you're saying that the way you operate is that persons subscribe, provide information to the credit agency. You then distill that information within your system, and that generates the report.
Right. It's double checked and triple checked for accuracy and correctness, and then it's allowed to enter our database, and we use that information to create these credit reports. So what we are is a facilitator, really. We stand between the lender and the borrower, because I don't know if you're aware, and I'm sure you are. In the past, if you went to a bank for a loan, before Creditinfo came into this country, if you went to a bank for a loan, what happened is that they took your application, and then as best they could, they called up their friends at other banks or sent emails to their colleagues, and they did a little bit of informal checking on you, right? And that really, that process and all the stuff that went with it is the reason why in the past it took you 6 weeks, almost 2 months sometimes in some cases, to get a loan.
And costs would be higher because the processing, the assessment, staff,
the HR
core
resources
staff
alone
would have to be spending money. But you haven't replaced those agencies, of course. They like say the credit section of courts or singers or the financial institutions. They still have their own obligation to their shareholders to make sure.
Well, we don't make decisions for you. We give you the information to help you make decisions. It is possible that someone with a really bad credit report and a really low score can still go to a lender or go to anybody and still be granted credit. It's not impossible. There are other factors to consider. Certainly, you may want to borrow $500,000 and you're putting up a property worth $20 million.
Yes.
Right? So, or something like that. You may want to borrow $100,000 and you're putting on a cash collateral, or somebody's putting on a cash collateral account that exceeds that amount. The risk is low. So
we're not talking about the money laundering because that transaction is suspicious.
Oh no.
If you want to borrow $500,000, you're putting up $20 million, something.
Oh no, a $20 million property. You may have owned your own home, and it's been paid for over the years, and then now you have a need, right?
So, we've established what a credit score is. We know that persons, all these, including the University of Guyana student facility, they subscribe to the. Is that the word? Now, when we say that they are subscribers, what does the word subscriber mean in that context?
It means that they're part of a legal arrangement that's represented by a subscriber agreement between us that allows them access to our system under a very narrow and strict set of circumstances, right? And that addresses what you were talking about before about the legitimacy of access to the information. Okay, so firstly, we will not just let anyone in. In fact, there in the legislation, in the act, there's a list of industry sectors whom stakeholders automatically can be subscribers if they so desire. And that, of course, includes financial institutions like banks and so on. Separate and apart from that, if any company, say a company in the commercial sector, would like to become a subscriber, they have first got to apply to the Bank of Guyana. And there's a very rigorous process of authentication, accompanied by, I believe, 2 weeks advertisement in the official gazette. Before the Bank of Guyana will say to that company, we give our approval that you may now join this important initiative.
The quality, and perhaps this is why it's so regulated by the Bank of Guyana, so it becomes a regulated activity. The quality of that information obviously depends on the integrity of the data that are provided.
But we will check it. We subjected to a lot of checks. We have actually in some cases declined to accept information until it has been properly cleaned, until we're satisfied that every aspect of it is correct, before we allow it into our database. Chris, look, we're purporting to have the knowledge and the expertise to make judgments on your credit worthiness. Now, that's a serious thing. That's a serious thing for a guy that's going somewhere for credit. Well, and so we have to make sure that when we say that, we know what we're talking about.
Well, I would say it's probably at an individual level, it's important. I don't want, because of some blip in data, my credit score is mistakenly put at closer
to 250 than 900.
Right. Because, of course, if I were to go to courts or anyone to get higher purchase, they access the system and then they realize they access Creditinfo system. They realize, hold on, this is a high risk. I'm not prepared to take that risk, or I'm going to take that risk, but only after imposing a number of other conditions and making the borrowing itself, because interest is really a price of risk.
Right. Well, I'm not sure that particular entity that you named, in fact, does that. It's certainly a choice. Many lenders use, and come back to what I said before, use personal judgment and a variety of other factors to help decide whether or not.
That's true. But if their company is a subscriber to the Credit Information Bureau, and this Credit Information Bureau says this is the objective evaluation of this potential borrower, you're not going to go saying that now we don't trust that thing. Otherwise, they shouldn't be a subscriber anyway.
Well, I hear you. It's their choice. But I'll let you in on the secret, because, of course...
Very open secret.
Oh, is this live?
Go on.
I'll let you in on the secret, because we have seen, and we have analyzed the trends in the data, obviously, because the data exists in our database. And by and large, Guyanese are not too bad at paying, you know. There are a lot of... The majority of folks out there have nothing to fear from this. And that right there is the reason why we exist. Because lenders did not know that. Right? Lenders did not know that. When you went to a bank for a loan before Creditinfo came into this market, they did not know how well you paid your water bill. They did not know how well you paid your phone bill. They did not know that you went to court faithfully at the end of the month and made sure that you made your payment on time. They did not know that you paid your credit union either by salary deduction or otherwise. They didn't know anything about you separate and apart from what relationship you had with them, right? And this resulted in a lot of denials. This resulted in a lot of trouble for Guyanese consumers. When Creditinfo got here, well, as I just told you, last year it was possible to go to the bank and get a loan in 1 day. So we're
Well,
very proud of what we've accomplished in this
Partly
market.
because of Creditinfo, not entirely because of
Oh, no,
Creditinfo.
no. I'm not going to sit here and take all the credit. I'd like to take all the credit. But we're live.
That would be realistic.
But we're live, but so I won't.
I think the point you make to David about Guyanese and paying their debts. We audit some regional companies, we meaning Ram and McRae.
Mm-hmm.
And Guyana has one of the best record in terms of the consumer meeting their debt obligations. Ironically, the biggest problems come with businesses.
Ah, right. That's a whole different kettle
How
of fish.
does what role does Creditinfo play in terms of assigning a credit score to businesses?
It works the same way as with individuals, right? Businesses are owned by individuals. Individuals have their own personal credit assessments, and then they have their own credit assessments based on the obligations taken on in the name of the business. But it's difficult or impossible to separate, to not lift the veil, for want of a better word, and to realize that these two are interconnected. And again, that's one of the reasons why we're here. I'm sure you know that the SME sector,
Small and
comprises-
medium-sized enterprises.
yes, small and medium-scale enterprises sector in Guyana is over 90% of all businesses, if you think about it. And the fact,
in terms of numbers.
in terms of numbers, correct.
Yes.
Not size, but in terms of sheer numbers. So there are a lot of small businesses out there.
Yes.
Let me tell you something about that I'm sure you already know, but most of our viewers might not know. And these are statistics that were taken not very recently, but not too long ago. Almost 70% of these businesses are unable to approach the formal financial sector for financing. Now, you're an accountant as well as an attorney. So you understand, if you follow the money trail, how this affects the development of the national economy, how this affects our gross domestic product. There are tons of businesses out there that are waiting to be created, are waiting to expand, right? And if given a chance, through the financing, can provide employment and a whole host of other things. And that's why you see you see a lot of initiatives by the government through the Small Business Bureau, which, by the way, is an organization I mean I'm very impressed with. There's some.
And I think it's also important, David, to assure the public that this legislative framework that has created the credit reporting agency was started under the previous administration.
Indeed.
And has continued and been strengthened under the current administration.
And
would that be a fair comment to make?
It is a very fair comment, and if anything, that underscores the importance of this initiative, that it has been one of the things that has been able to straddle the political divide. We have not. We have had, for a good way to say it, we have had an unbroken relationship, and very fruitful and beneficial relationships under both administrations.
So we know now how it's created, and one of the the broad objectives, the broad benefits of this system of credit reporting, which has been there since the beginning of the last century, with perhaps the most famous credit agency being Dun & Bradstreet, where, and I remember when I was working at Chase Manhattan Bank in the 60s, that's a long time ago, you would go to Dun & Bradstreet and ask for a credit report. And now, credit report doesn't say, at least in those days, I'm sure it's moved on, it doesn't say this person is good for lend them $10,000. It says that this is their situation, this is their credit record. Is that how it operates now?
That hasn't changed. We are unable to say what amount they're good for. We will say how creditworthy they are.
Yes.
The amount that you
How creditworthy they are by based on
without
the
assessing
objective
right,
but
without attaching a number to that.
Yes.
Because of course that's very difficult. But certainly, there are other factors. My credit report may be the best credit report that anyone has ever seen, but I still have a limit beyond which I cannot afford to pay a particular amount of money. The credit report provides that, and that is why I wanted to lead our discussion a little bit off to the left and emphasize that the credit score simply summarizes the information that's on the credit report itself. So you have information upon a person's income, you have information on what obligations through the credit report he has currently, you have information on past obligations and how he has serviced them, okay? And you have the credit score, which takes the last two things and says, this guy is assigned this number.
And this credit reporting has nothing to do entirely with businesses. It's of individuals, it's of businesses, whatever it is.
No, businesses are also entities. You can't get a credit report for your business.
Well, you can get, even a student can have a credit score.
No.
No?
Because of course credit reports are data driven.
But you said that UG. These are students.
Right. Well, that is correct. That is correct. I'm sorry. So my mind didn't immediately go there.
Good.
So I'm sorry. So yes, even a student could have a credit score.
Let me tell you, I'm not an expert in anything, but I remember my daughter saying to me, Dad, I need that money kind of like yesterday because otherwise it will affect my credit score.
Oh, she did?
Yes.
Oh, good job.
Not Guyana though.
Oh,
not
okay,
Guyana. She works in America. But it does show you how important it is. And I think the point I would like this program to bring home is the significance and importance of credit reporting and your own organization, Creditinfo Guyana Limited, to both the individual or business as well as to the society.
Yeah.
It brings down borrowing costs. It facilitates lending. It makes same-day lending quite possible.
It has made it possible. It has made it possible. It definitely has. The takeaway from this is the importance of responsible credit practices.
Yes.
And look, this is how I see the companies. This is how we see our role. Sorry, our role is to help the consumer, the Guyanese consumer, whether he has a business or doesn't have a business, is to help him to manage his credit affairs. I don't know how well known it is. I have been myself and my CEO. We have been in the market, we've been on television, we've been on the radio. We've outreach to the public. I guess we need to do a little more than that, but we will give you a free credit report once a year, right? But we are encouraging people to not just come in for your free credit report, but to come in 4 times a year or 5 times a year and keep a check on your status, keep a check on your financial status, because that credit report will stand between you and approval. And I'm sure you know that one of the aspects of the legislation says that currently exists is that all lenders must, there is no choice in the matter, all lenders must pull a credit report before a loan application can be processed. So if you stop for a minute and think of that, you realize how important the credit report is. And many people out there are not aware of the credit report, and they're not aware of how banks see them. Right? We're not creating this information. We're just collecting this information from various sources.
Yes.
And by and large, the banks have had access to this, maybe in a limited capacity, long before we even came to Guyana. Right? So you have to manage your credit.
Well, you say persons can come in to the organization. Do they have to pay a fee to get that?
Not the first one. They'll give you the first one for free. Every 12 months, we'll give you one report for free.
And thereafter?
Thereafter, it's a cost of $2,000.
$2,000 to get an idea of what an officially sanctioned mechanism assesses your credit.
It's a crystal ball. It'll tell you if you know how to read it, and it's quite simple to read. It'll tell you the likelihood of you being accepted or approved for credit anywhere you go. And it's good to know these things ahead of time. The other thing which some of your early questions might have raised is the accuracy of the information. We do perform lots of checks, and the institutions that upload to us, they ensure that the information they're giving us is as correct as possible. But certainly, incorrect information does tend sometimes to creep through. It's not a perfect world, and I won't sit here and pretend to you that it is, right? So, do you really want to, when you go to the bank or you go anywhere for that loan or that credit facility, to then find out that your credit report is incorrect and then have to wait until we fix it before you can get through?
Well, how do you fix? Let's say I were to walk in tomorrow morning to Creditinfo, which is based in
we're in Newmarket
Street. Or I or someone else walked into Creditinfo tomorrow morning. I said, look, I'd like my free copy of the credit report. And this credit report discloses a credit score of 300. This person has probably never borrowed or has borrowed but never defaulted and feels that something is wrong with that number. Tell us what can go wrong with that number, and if it's wrong, how do you identify what is wrong and how do you then fix it?
Okay, well, that's fairly simple. So, give you an idea of some of the things that we've encountered. Excuse me. Every institution uploads to our database on a monthly basis. Some of them more regularly than that. So, if you've repaid your loan and they don't let us know that your loan has been repaid, then that loan remains open. Now, because you have repaid the loan, you have stopped paying. Because, of course, right? The last balance remains on the system, and no payments are recorded month by month by month. So, of course, that pulls your credit down because we think, or rather, the system thinks that you are in default. When in actual fact, you have paid your last installment. Now, this hasn't happened.
But if the supply of the information updates their
updates is the word. Updates is the key word there.
Monthly. Surely it should show that I have zero balance.
Yes,
that I've serviced my debt.
Yes, it should. Yes, it should. And in most cases, in 99.9% of the cases, it does. I'm just giving you one scenario that we might have encountered in the past. But this is the good news. And to answer your question, once there's a problem with your credit report, we will find the problem and we will fix it within 7 business days. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything, because we will be able to identify where the anomaly exists, because we'll be able to go through your credit report to you, and you will be able to say, well, do you have this much money for this particular institution? And you, of course, will say, oh, no, I paid that off since last year. So right away, we know where the problem is. We then contact the institution on your behalf, and we say, our client, Mr. Ram, has said to us that this facility has been repaid since last year. Kindly confirm. Of course, that institution will say, oh, shucks, of course. This slipped through the crack or something happened, because these are computers, and you know computer systems are not infallible, right? Any number of things can go wrong. They will then fix it. In our system, your credit report is fixed, and you're a happy camper, all within 7 business days.
Now, we know that at the lower level, you have 250, which means a red flag, and probably something even beyond that, meaning 300 is probably not that good either.
Oh no, it's not great.
Good. Is there a band or a categorization? I'm not sure, and maybe you can tell us how many persons have a perfect credit score, meaning 900, or is a perfect credit score maybe 850 to 900? How is it assessed in the trade?
Well, look, that's a difficult question to answer, but let me try anyway. A perfect credit score is a matter of perspective, because different institutions have different risk appetites.
No, but you have a score.
Yes, but you have a score. But
we're talking the score itself. Forget the lender. The lender is obviously going to do some other tests as well.
Right. No, but what I'm saying is, all institutions or all people have what is known as a risk appetite.
Yes.
So Bank A might be willing to accept a score of 600 or 650 and say that is a good score, that is a good enough score, we are willing to lend to this person with a score like that. Bank B may say, we're not that silly or whatever, and so a good score for us is a 750 and upward. So the perfect score is from the perspective of the lender. Now, if you want a perfect score, 900 is a perfect score from our perspective. But once you get below 900, the perfect score is what you wish it to be, depending on what you will use to lend to the person that's sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but it
No,
underscores.
I'm asking. I'm
right.
asking objective questions.
But it underscores the point that at Creditinfo, we don't make judgments at all.
No, but the data you have. So I'm not asking you to make a judgment.
Mhm.
I'm simply asking what is the band that would be considered in the trade if it does, what a perfect score is.
On your credit report, there are score bands
Yes.
that range from very high risk to high risk to average risk to very low risk to low risk. To low risk and then very low risk. So of course, very low risk would be closer to 900.
Yes.
And very high risk would be closer.
And there's
to
no such thing as no risk, because every
risk
debt
exists in every single
every debt
thing.
has a risk.
And your credit report will contain these score bands. And your credit report will tell you into which one of these score bands that you fall. Right? But again, you asked me about the perfect score. And that doesn't say whether or not your score is perfect. It simply says this is the band you fall into.
So you don't ever say the person has 900, they fall into this band.
If they have
In the
900, we'll say, as far as we know, based on the information that we have, this person is very low risk. Because of course, the score 900 is excellent. I've actually never seen one.
Okay.
I must remember to.
No, because you don't want to go prying into personal.
No, I must
data.
remember to pay attention. But I've never seen I've never seen a score of 900. And while since you said that, let me just point out that one of the things that we will never do is access someone's credit report without their permission, because legislatively the law also says that before a person's credit report can be accessed by anyone, including Creditinfo, we must obtain your permission and we have to get it in writing. So it's not sufficient for you to say, David, please pull my credit report. You've got to say to me, here is my application form, that's my signature, this is a copy of my ID, may I have my credit report?
I want to step back.
Sure.
I go to company X and I want to maybe some credit. But I say, look, I don't want my data being shared with anyone, including the credit bureau. Can that person do that? Or under the law now, they must
No, they
agree.
Well, the law requires two things. The law requires that they must share information, because without information, the whole credit bureau initiative
Yes.
is a waste of time.
But for them to do that, they have to get permission.
No,
do
no, they don't.
They don't need permission.
No, they don't need permission. But we do respect, and the law takes cognizance of an individual's right to privacy and confidentiality of their sensitive information. So while the information is shared with the credit bureau, no one may see it unless you give permission, and you have to give permission in writing. And these are the things that are audited by the Bank of Guyana, and these are the things that they check for to ensure that every single credit report, right, in every instance, is accompanied by a signed authorization form. If someone out there has pulled your credit report and you have not signed anything, then we would certainly be interested in hearing about it, because I want to emphasize once more that the credit bureau exists to serve the needs of the consumers. A lot of what we've talked about tonight might suggest to our viewers that we're here for the lenders, and in a large sense we are.
Well, you're there for the economy.
But
if the government did not see it as fit and appropriate, that look, this is a necessary or this is a beneficial initiative,
it would never have happened.
it would not have legislatively made it possible.
Statistically speaking, countries have registered, and particularly for businesses, I might add, have registered. If I recall some of the stats that I have studied, I've registered over 17% increase in access to credit once a credit bureau hits the market. The sharing of information reduces the risk in transactions. Reducing risk in transactions has the effect of loosening purse strings, for want of a better word.
Well, let's apply that to Guyana.
Sure.
You've been in place since 2010, I think?
No, 2013.
13.
The law was passed in 2010.
2010, yes. What has been Guyana's record in terms of extension to credit? And let me make this point before you answer. The Credit Bureau does not necessarily or automatically create lending opportunities. Lending opportunities are created by virtue of wider business factors.
Of course.
That there are opportunities to be explored, and if those opportunities are there, credit is available, the economy does well. How has Creditinfo been doing in terms of, and how has it assessed lending compared with that 17% that you say appears to be the international norm?
Okay, so 2 questions in one. First of all, to add a little bit of clarification to the first part of your statement, where we are is we are on the last end. The business opportunities do exist, but often without the intervention of an agency like a credit bureau, you tend to hit a brick wall at the point where the lending has to occur. So what we do is facilitate that part of it. So we don't. You're correct. We don't create business opportunities, but we certainly make lending easier. We have seen since we got started, and more particularly since the amendment to the Act in 2016, we have seen 2 things happening in this market. We have seen an increase in lending in certain sectors, right? Because as you pointed out, other factors do exist. But more importantly, we have seen a decrease in delinquency. And Bank of Ghana publishes its statistics online, and anyone can peruse those prudential reports and be able to validate that particular statement. So there has been a decrease in delinquency. There has been a decrease in defaults, which is good news for the lenders. And there have been an increase in lending in some sectors of the economy, and that's good news for the borrowers, for the consumer, for the businesses, for all those people who... Now, I am not able to say definitively whether or not that was entirely up to Creditinfo, whether or not it was all coincidental. You can draw your own conclusions, but we like to believe that we had something to do with it.
What I think is fair, it would be fair to say, is that the existence of credit agencies and a credit reporting system that is credible and widely accepted helps to facilitate that decision as to whether or not a loan should be given. So it's one of the factors that go in. Obviously, you could have the best credit rating, but if you got some harebrained idea,
right,
about
no
business,
one will lend you the
no
money.
one will lend you.
I just wanted to point out that along the lines of what I was saying before, that it's crucial, it's vitally important for consumers, everyone in fact, to manage their credit. Lots of people don't think, we have developed a kind of a mindset where we tend to close the stable door after
Well,
a
I'm
horse
hoping
is
that
gone.
after this program tonight, people realize,
Well, I
look,
certainly hope so.
this facilitates credit, but it also makes credit hopefully cheaper.
It
Because if a lending institution, and whether that's a financial institution or a higher purchase institution, if it has to incur a lot of costs on bad debts, if it has to incur a lot of costs on credit processing,
it's not going to absorb those costs. It's going to pass it on to the lender.
It passes on costs.
It's going to pass it on
So,
to the borrower, for sure.
It's good for the economy,
Mhm.
and it's good for the individuals.
Exactly. But no one knows, a lot of people out there, and this is the sad part, it really bothers me. A lot of people don't know what their credit score is. A lot of people have never seen their credit
Well,
report.
I
A lot
mean,
of people don't care.
No, but it shouldn't bother you. What it should do, it should say, I will do something about it.
We are doing something about it. But the learning curve is now picking up speed. Persons are understanding the importance of good credit, and more importantly, they're understanding the value of knowing where you stand at any point in time. It doesn't matter if you're going to take a loan. You don't need a loan today. You don't need any credit today. You still have a responsibility to manage your financial situation in very, let's say, in the same way you manage your health. Are you going to wait until you get a heart attack before
Or you manage
start?
your reputation.
Or you manage your reputation. There you go. Excellent way of putting it. So we are standing by the consumer in his quest to manage the way his financial circumstances evolve from day to day, from month to month, and from year to year. We have our Know Before You Go campaign, which is currently running, which essentially exhorts people to come in before you go to a lender. Come in and check your credit, and to see what your chances are of being approved.
One of the challenges we often hear about the Ghana economy and economies at this level of development is that it's a cash economy.
Unfortunately.
Persons are not on the radar. How does Creditinfo resolve that issue, if it can do so at all?
Well, that's a good question. Well, we can. What we're doing about it so far is we've included non-traditional credit data. So while you may not have had a loan, or you may not have had any kind of credit, you certainly might have a telephone account. You certainly might have an account with GWI, and these things, being credit, would create a credit account for you. But we're going a bit further. Very soon we're going to introduce something called psychometric scoring, and this is way out there, and you have to promise that that it's. I promise you, it's serious stuff. Psychometric scoring is going to create a credit score for you based on psychological factors rather than traditional credit data.
Does that not move away from objective criteria, lending history and so on?
But it's
and does that, David, not give rise to suspicion that, look, since it's subjective, it is more easily manipulable?
No, it's not. And that is why I said a lot of people will look at it with suspicion. This is not going to happen now. This is definitely in our future. It's how credit scoring is done in the developed world, because it was found that traditional credit data is not a strong enough indication. When you get right down to it, it's not as strong as lenders would want to indicate the creditworthiness or to calculate probabilities of default at any time in the future, right? Because, Chris, look, who you are is how you're going to behave. Psychometric scoring takes cognizance of that. Now, I don't understand a lot of it. I'm just telling you the extent to which Creditinfo is going to innovate in the years to come.
And that's based, again, on international norms,
right,
and properly evaluated techniques.
Of course. There's the use of big data, right? So, for instance, some credit bureaus in other countries make it possible for you to get a loan based solely on data from your mobile phone. You look at your contact list, and if you have a lot of friends, then they will lend you a certain amount of money, because they figure if you open the business, then these friends will support you. If they look at your calling, the way you use your phone, your calling patterns. If during the day you're on Facebook a lot, you're on social media a lot, then you're probably not being as productive at work as you are, and therefore they have to think about whether or not they would wish to lend you. All these factors, if you think about it, have weight.
Yeah, but they're less objective than your payment record.
Yes,
and payment history.
Yes, they are less objective from one perspective, but they have been proven statistically to be more effective at predicting the possibility of risk.
I don't want to raise any issues about the integrity of the system, but a place like Guyana that has only introduced this type of reporting within the past 5 years does not have the data, does not have the infrastructure.
Certainly.
As say the United States, where we said Dun & Bradstreet been around.
We're not going to do that tomorrow, but this aspect of our conversation is about how we intend to innovate. We as a company, we really like to ensure that we give the best service to our consumers and to our customers.
Who do you regard as your customers?
Our customers.
Who are the credit bureaus?
Even though our subscribers are the lenders, our customers are the consumers and businesses and companies out there who stand to benefit if things are made easier for them when they need a little bit of help. That's our customer.
And within the last minute we have,
sure.
You're saying persons can come in. Is there a way of accessing one score electronically?
Yes, we're shortly going to be introducing something called My Creditinfo. My Creditinfo will give the capability and through an app at some point where you on your mobile phone, your tablet, your computer, you can access your accounts, password protected of course, and you can get your credit score. You can download your report. You can do any number of things. So we are heading into that phase of our operations because we recognize that convenience is the new watchword. People don't want to come into a credit bureau to get their credit report. They prefer to sit at home or their business, you know?
Well, Mr. Falconer, thank you so much for appearing on Blind Dog this evening.
It was my pleasure.
I trust viewers that this program has been informational and it has been useful to you to understand the importance of credit and the importance for you as individuals and businesses to enhance your credit scores in terms of reducing your borrowing costs and helping our economy to grow. I want to say thank you again, David. Operators and viewers, thank you and good night. I'll see you next week when we will discuss a book on domestic violence by one of the persons who had been on Plain Talk a few years ago. Until then, my name is Christopher Ram, and I wish you all the best.